Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be waiting another minute maybe to see if anyone else is joining us. And welcome to Breakout Session 3, Mainstreaming the ASEAN RAI through Actions of Civil Society Actors. I've been introduced already. You can call me Emma if you need to speak to me. And I work for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations on responsible agricultural investment. And I'm very happy to be your moderator today. Before I share some housekeeping rules, I have to inform you that if you have joined this breakout room by mistake, you can also write to the Secretariat in the chat box. You will see OAI Breakout Room 3 co-host to let them know whether you would like to be moved to a different room. But you're also very welcome to stay with us. I would like to encourage everyone, at least when presentations are not being done, to switch your cameras on if possible. So with a bit of imagination, we can feel we're all in the same room. Also, if you haven't done so already, please mute your microphone so the audio is better for everyone. As was said before, unfortunately, we cannot have interpretation in breakout sessions. So this session will be in English only, and you will have interpretation again in the final plenary session. These are the housekeeping rules you're seeing here. So again, we remind you, you can send comments in the chat box and questions in the Q&A box. And we would also really enjoy if you want to raise your hand and speak when we have our discussion. Now, as you all will have seen from the program, we have 50 minutes to discuss lessons learned by civil society organizations across the region in the use of the ASEAN RAI principles. We will also aim to identify in a collective discussion to which you're all invited to contribute priorities for future work and recommendations that we can then share with government representatives and private sector companies in the final plenary session. This means we have a lot to do right now, so I apologize in advance if I will be quite strict with time management. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Mr. Thongdam Pongpichit, and I hope I got that right, who is the co-director of the Sustainable Agriculture and Environment Development Association, SAEDA. And we will hear about activities implemented by CSOs in Lao PDR and priorities for future work in the country. Thongdam, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. You hear me? The sound is good? Yes.
Very well,
Yes.
thank you.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to ask the presentation to be shown by the Secretariat. Great, thank you so much.
Yes, yes. Good mornings for some country, and so good afternoon for all. My name is Thongdam Pongpichit, the co-director of the Sustainable Agriculture and Environment Association. Thanks, moderator and organizer to invite us. I managed to invite us because I was the assigned representative from the Lao civil society and to speak on behalf of them. And also our presentation, we also have been discussed from our networks and includes INGO and civil society in Lao to consensus the idea and the concepts that to my present today. Next, please. Looking for our actor we have very close with the INGO, especially for ABO, GIZ, Habitats, VMI also, and also Farm Winlock, and WCS, SNV, and MIOG, and other. Part of the civil society, we have SEDA, DAURA, and CDA, Lao Farmer Networks, PACA, and also PS, NUA, NCA, and HGA, and GDA, also the National DDO 90. A part of the government is we have a multi-stakeholder office, especially for the planning investment is the main the focal point for the right issue, and agriculture and forestry, natural resource environment. Also, we also have our pilot project to setting the network and capacity building for the local stakeholder, especially in Champasak, Luang Nam Tha, and also in Vientiane. Next. For the activity that we did in the past, when we have multi-stakeholder different organization, especially for the government department, also INGO agency, UN agency, also GIZ, we have SDG, JICA, EU, and they all of them almost promote the rights. Especially in the past that we are conduct the right capacity need assessment that did by the GIZ, because the first speaker, they also talking about this issue. And we also organize the learnings and together with the government at the district level. It's led by the Habitat, also VFI. And we also assessment the different policies, strategies related to the rights and VGT and EPIC also, that SEDA together with the DAURA, also together with the ABO. And we also did the research and study on investment and context farming, and develop the disseminate the technical guideline on the media, and develop the IC tool for the training, and provides the training and workshop for the local level, and also for the civil society organization. And we also train about the youth to the youth, and ethnic minority and women group also in the agribusiness, especially for the habitats. They have the DULAS project and an agri project led by the habitats. And we also have the sector working group, and especially for the rice sector, and custom tenure rice in the forest, and led by the MIOG, and sustainable land-based investment, and led by the SEDA, and sub-registration, and led by the ABO, and also land information system and data sharing is led by the GIZ. It is a sector working group for the sharing and networking. And for the achievement lesson learned from the past, that we have our networking and exciting experience via the WhatsApp, and also sector working group. And we also assessment the right issue, especially for how to better engagement, better civil society, and to understand about the right issue is understand about what is the gap, and what is the civil society need, and local government need also. And we are strong and integrated and right up and the policy framework, especially for the right and related to the civil social and investment impact, and we also capacity for the civil local level. And we also have increased the number of the government stakeholders to involve the right issue activity and capacity building for the local government incentive to work with the civil society and learning program multi-stakeholder, right? And also we also organize the South-South exchange learning on right issue. We organize together with ABO and Land Desa. and to engage youth and ethnic minority and women for the people disability, and to the training and disseminate the right issue to learn together. And we also increase civil society the role in the SME and to promote the clean the production, especially for the organics products to reduce the chemical pesticide, because chemical pesticides is the one of the big issue that will be organized sharing and learning recommendation from the local government. That they have to protection, they have to promote the organics production to stop or reduce the chemical issue. However, we also have a challenge, some challenge that to promote the right still have the limited budget and also long-term support. And civil society and local government is a very weak experience and skill on this issue. And they also limited the monitoring and evaluation system, like action plan, especially for the local government to monitoring the private sector land concession investment after they already approved the company for the investment. And they also lack of the effective enforcement, especially to disseminate the policy and law and to the local, especially in the local rural and community, that is still very weak. And we are also limit the cooperation among the multi-stakeholder between the government office and also civil society and together with the private sector. It is the lack of the mechanism. And the lastly is the unclear about the guideline of the land and agriculture and forest, especially for the investment definition and commitment and resulting unscheduled investment, and especially for the land grabbing, land and investment by the investor without government permission, and also they can change and by themselves for the implementing without permits from the government. This one is the one of the issue of our challenge. And for the next priority area for the future, that we more on the partnership and capacity for the civil society, private sector, and government institute, and we have to working together and to address capacity building for rights and VGT and for the CSO and NPA organization. And the rights and other guidelines we have to develop and implementing and disseminate at the local level, and documentation and research, awareness raising on the social media and Facebook, TV, and other media, government media. And the lastly, we have to organize the national and regional learning exchange among the rights model and policy and program, and to learning together with the regional and national level, includes the local level. My presentation is finished, but however, and I was a presentation on behalf of the civil society. We also have the VFI and GIZ, Habitat, ABO also attend, and our CSO partner attend this meeting. And any question and answer, they will help us to contribute, sharing with us. And thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for organizer. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Tong Dam. It is really amazing to see how much has been done in Laos and how many organizations were involved in this work. I note particularly that you are indicating as priorities the need for more capacity building in the country, and also especially at local level. Now, we have reserved some time at the end of this breakout session for everyone to share any additional lessons learned that you may have, any priority for future work. But right now, I would like to see if there's just any question on what Tongdam has shared with us. So if you have any question for him, please feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself, or you can even use the Q&A box below, or the chat box below, which you prefer. I would like to ask you, if you have a question, to also specify your name and organization, please. And if it's possible to have your cameras on, it will make us feel we're actually having a good interaction. I think, Mr. Tongdam, you did a great job in explaining a lot in very little time. And I see a hand raised by, sorry, I will certainly pronounce this wrongly, apologize. Shui Tain?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, please, sir.
Thank you very much. I think the gentleman really presented very insight, information from the RAI implementation and Laos program. I think one of the key message that attended to me is, the challenges that actually presented as part of the presentation. By the way, my name is Shui Tain, and also actually I am from a local NGO named as Land Core Group LCG in Myanmar. My attention is on the challenge, the last challenge, in one of the slides, unclear guidelines on land agriculture in unscheduled investment and something like that. So I think that is quite critical in our country as well. Irresponsible investment impacting customary tenure rights, indigenous rights of the people on the ground. So the question to the gentleman is, how this challenge is addressed in reality on the ground in Laos? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tain. So, Mr. Tongdam, would be useful to hear your insight on how challenges related to sometimes unclear guidelines or different, perhaps also different sort of legislations on the ground. How has civil society in Laos addressed these? I understand correctly your question, Mr. Tain, correct?
That's correct. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Because according on the that I present about an unclear guideline on the land and agriculture and forest also in investment, because our the law and let's quite own, and they have to develop according on the present issue. And right now is for the together with the INGO and government also, especially for the ministry level, and they almost a lot of still the process of the discussion, organizing, and support the governments to develop the guideline and to implementing appropriate for the right now and for the issue right now. And because right now is for the governments, they are almost on the process of the development, but however we have still the weak on the not yet enforcement clearly. And this one is the support by the GIZ, also the VFI. It is the process of the development, the guideline, update the guideline. And they also include the private sector and civil society to the process of the development. It is it's on the process of development. And we also have our friend from Laos also. They also to share the issue, especially from the GIZ also attend here. They can help to explain more. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Tongdam. Is there any other question on this first presentation? I think I don't see other questions. So thank you, Mr. Tongdam. And we can now move to our second speaker, Ms. Max Katindig, who is assistant.
Oh, you did not see my hand. My hand is disappear.
Sorry.
I was here. Huh.
Sorry, yeah, I thought you were clapping your hands to Mr. Tongdam. Apologies for that. Please go ahead, Mr. Kamka.
My name is Kampa Kelmanichan. I am leader of the Community Development and Environment Association. I work with the Lao people in the almost with the farmer more than about 20 years. So the main I would like to add the presentation of Mr. Tongdam is very good. Thank you very much. So the big challenge that I see that Lao farmer almost very small, almost small, and 2-3 hectares per the maximum, almost. Then in the mountainous area, then the work of the civil society in Laos, they have to think about how to centralize the farmer work together, and then how to centralize the product and try to make it the high quality, and have them to access to the market is also important. When they centralize together, they work together, then they have the power to negotiate and the power to do something. So I think that our civil society, maybe in Laos, maybe Normai, CDA, and SEDA work close with the farmer. So we have to make our efforts more to work with the farmer, and how to make it, how to help them to get the income. The income or not also the group, but family income also very important. Thank you very much. I just add to the Mr. Tongdam idea.
Thank you, Mr. Kamka. Mr. Tongdam, would you like to reply anything to this? Although I think it was a very interesting point that we should use again later on when we are discussing about priorities for future work. So Mr. Kamka, please keep this point for later because we will discuss it again.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
I have to answer now, or keep to next?
As you prefer. I think it was more of a comment than a question, but by all means, if you want to reply, feel free to do.
Because he's more on the comment, especially for the how to support the small farmer and link the production to the market, especially for the quality of the production. We are even the civil society, also the INGO also in here, and other agency. and also governments. They almost now the governments more promote the organics product is quality of the production and for the local market and to the export also is the good strategy of the government for the to the 2030. It's the vision for 2030. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Tong Lam. So now let's move to Ms. Max Katindig. She's Assistant Secretary General of the Asian Partnership for the Development of Human Resources in Rural Areas, ASEAN RAI. And Max will be sharing some lessons learned from activities in 6 countries in the region, priorities for future work to enhance especially youth and women inclusion in agricultural investment, and recommendations for collaboration with other stakeholders as well. Max, over to you.
Thank you, Emma. May I request the Secretariat to please share the PowerPoint slides? Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Max Katindig. I'm Assistant Secretary General of the Asian Partnership for the Development of Human Resources in Rural Areas, or ASEAN RAI. So here with me today are my colleagues from the Regional Secretariat and as well as my colleagues from the National DRAS. ASEAN RAI is a regional partnership of social development organizations in 11 Asian countries. And we have been involved in the promotion of responsible agriculture investments since 2011. The next slide. The next slide, please. The next slide shows that our work on RAI is embedded in our core strategies, specifically in our current strategic action plan of elevating rural communities towards sustainable territorial development and transformation. It is anchored on several global and regional development agenda, as you can see, including the SDGs and the ASEAN Vision, the UN Decade of Family Farming, the ASEAN RAI, the CFS RAI, and even the VGGT. So we believe that meaningful realization of these global and regional goals will only be achieved if strategic actions reach on ground and include multi-stakeholder participation, especially of the rural people's organization. We recognize, though, that there is a need to capacitate our partner people's organizations, such as in constructive engagement, in partnership building with public sector, especially with private sector, and many other areas. So it is in this context that ASEAN RAI invests on harnessing the capacity of family farmers and their organizations. Since 2019, ASEAN RAI, with support from FAO, we have been investing on developing capacities of CSOs and FOs, or farmers organizations, in Cambodia, in Laos, in Myanmar, Philippines, Thailand, and in Vietnam, especially on promoting youth and women's role in responsible agriculture investments. Next slide, please. Along these capacity building activities, we have also invested in case documentation and scoping studies on rural youth and women's participation in agri-investments. These studies have highlighted some important policy and program gaps in the region. In terms of organizational capacities, there is a limited presence of youth-led organizations providing specific services to youth in agriculture. There is also a limited organizational and technical capacities of youth and women in agriculture sector. In terms of policy environment, we noted the absence of, if not a weak enabling environment that is specifically supportive of youth and women in agri-sector. In countries where there are supportive policies or plans in place, the extent of implementation on the ground, especially at the local level, varies. There is a very different or notable differences in the implementation at the local level. We have also noted that ASEAN RAI guidelines are not yet well known at the national and subnational, especially at the subnational level. So we still have a lot of work to do in promoting this important policy instrument in the region. In terms of programming and public investment, we have mapped out several national and local initiatives of government and CSOs alike, focusing on youth and rural women. But these initiatives still need integration of the ASEAN RAI guidelines. So in general, we could say that existing investments in agriculture are still not reaching to or effectively targeting many ASEAN youth and women in agriculture sector. So next slide, please. In response to these challenges, ASEAN, with support from FAO, have conducted several awareness raising and capacity development among CSOs, farmers' organization, even select staff of concerned government agencies. These activities aimed at strengthening the capacities of FOs, CSOs, and government agencies to empower women and youth to better engage in RAI and also in RAI-related policy and decision-making processes. Saida, Tongdam, and the earlier presenter is one of our members in Lao, and they have participated in the early stage of RAI regional work, and we are happy to see that they have come a long way in terms of implementing this RAI initiative at the national level. So concretely, the awareness raising, the capacity development initiatives that we have implemented, these activities have helped the participants to internalize RAI principles and embed it in their work and in their engagements with the government. For instance, concretely at the regional level, ASEAN was able to embed the RAI guidelines and strategies in the ASEAN RDPE Framework Action Plan for 2021 to 2025. As well as in the draft ASEAN Rural Development Master Plan, where we are part of the development process. At the country level, our member trusts are able to enrich their ongoing advocacies by integrating ASEAN RAI guidelines in their work. For instance, in Cambodia, our Cambodian colleagues are here. Cambodia and its members have been participating in the consultation on Agriculture Master Plan 2030, even prior to attending these trainings and webinar on RAI. But from attending these trainings, after these trainings, Cambodia and its member partners were able to craft proposed strategies following RAI principles. So they have used their policy proposals in participating in the consultations related to Agriculture Master Plan. So they brought with them this understanding, this knowledge, this appreciation on RAI guidelines and principles as they engage with the government in crafting the Agriculture Master Plan. So similarly, in other countries, our member trusts were also able to embed the RAI guidelines in their ongoing initiatives. So as you can see, these experiences of our country trusts highlight the importance of increasing the stakeholders' awareness and knowledge on RAI so that they will be able to enrich their existing work according to RAI principles. So it also shows that the translation of ASEAN RAI guidelines at the country level may not necessarily mean a totally new RAI-specific policy or program, but it could be ensuring that existing policies or programs such as public investments or spending are RAI responsive. So there are many tracks by which we can implement or see through the traction of this regional policy instrument at the country or at the subnational level. More importantly, these experiences of ASEAN and our member trusts tell us that there is more to be done. And in the next slide, we have identified some concrete actions which our fellow CSOs could also consider. One is the continued awareness raising on RAI guidelines among our ranks, and I could not emphasize enough how important this is. The second one is to contribute to advancing, reviewing, and amending national policies and programs supporting youth and women access in RAI, and ensuring or taking note that this ensuring that the amendment are responsive or supportive of RAI guidelines implementation. And last but not the least is investing in local actions, supporting youth and women agri-entrepreneurship. At the same time, we have to continue engaging other stakeholders from public and private sectors. So in the next slide, please, we recognize the need to continue the awareness raising, targeting the both public and private sectors. We also need to maximize existing engagement multi-stakeholder mechanisms at the country levels. And we also recommend that we continue this process as a regular, this forum as a regular regional multi-stakeholder mechanism for us to share and exchange models, policies, or programs related on RAI. But more important for us is to ensure that these discussions and agreements at the regional level have concrete actions on the ground. So lastly, we propose to have mechanisms for monitoring or social accountability on RAI guidelines and implementation. This concludes our presentation, and we are grateful to FAO for supporting us in this initiative and providing us this platform to share our work. Maraming salamat po. Back to you, Emma.
Thank you very much, Max. And I think this presentation was really well conceived, and also for our work, this identification of priorities, both for interchange between civil society organizations, which also relates to the question we heard before, but also with other stakeholders. The reason for organizing this event is precisely to hear what's going on from the different sectors and try to work more and more together. I wonder if there's any question for Max at this point before opening a bit the floor for discussion on lessons that other organizations may have learned or other priorities that may not have mentioned. But do you have any specific question on the work of ASEAN and the national DRAs that Max presented for the different countries? Even if there's something that you'd like to understand better, how ASEAN did, or any further detail, feel free to ask your question, really. This breakout session is a bit more informal than the plenary session, and it's really an opportunity to exchange.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, this is Sondalin from Laos. I have questions to ASEAN and Mr. Thongam from Laos. So in terms of the private sector partnership, I would like to hear more elaboration of how civil society engage with private sector directly. And I have seen from Mr. Thongam's presentation that there is a lack of long-term funding support. In that sense, how could we strategize this in terms of engaging with private sector and obtaining or having this strategic partnership in obtaining the long-term support from private sector? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Sonedalin. Can I ask you, I think I've missed which organization or, yeah.
I'm an independent development consultant.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, thank you. Who'd like to get that question first?
Okay, Emma, if I may, in terms of engagement with the private sector, so ASEAN as well as the country DRAs are engaged with Grow Asia, and Grow Asia has is convening several multi-stakeholder country partnerships at different countries, and also our member DRAs are also part of those country mechanisms where there is a representation from private sector, from the government agencies, from the CSOs, and from farmers organization. It is through these country mechanisms where they have the chance to sit down with these different sectors to discuss further on these RAI guidelines and principles. Concretely, how we as CSOs and our partner farmers organizations engage with the private sector. If okay with you, Emma, I would like to call on Mr. Him Noon of Cambodia to give us a concrete example of how they specifically deal with private sector, how Cambodia is helping farmers organization in dealing with private sector. Over to you, Noon.
Okay, thank you much, and and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, actually, Cambodia is the multi-stakeholder platforms and is a member of ASEAN RAI as well. So we are composed of three sectors. The first is from the farmer organization, and another one is from national and NGO as well, and the last one is from private sectors. Recently, we have private companies. They are our members. So why we engage private sectors? As Cambodia, we strongly focus on the value chains and also agricultural cooperatives development. So we consider that private sector is the keys actors for to buy and also to link our farmer product to the market, while another part of our member like international and also national NGO is the coordinator and also the facilitator. So it's like Cambodia is like the hub, business hub for provide space for those actors. I mean, from the producer and also private buyers and also the supporters. They work together and they have the room to dialogues and also to discuss and to set the guideline and also how to work together. And if we talk about how to promote the ASEAN RAI guidelines to the private sectors, so actually we not only the private sector, Cambodia, we also engage with the academy as well, and I think you know that private sector is the key player for the business or for the investment. So they have to know what is the responsible agriculture investment, how they support and contribute to the ASEAN RAI guidelines. And recently, from the supporting from ASEAN RAI and also from FAO projects, so Cambodia have opportunity to engage them through inviting them to join the workshop, to get their inputs and also to get their involved in our developing some case study and also some written documents. So I think they're important. And recently, we also our teams Cambodia we have opportunity to engage with the CPSA, Grow Asia Partnership in Cambodia, to provide not the training but to provide the awareness raising on the to the private sectors. I think around 40 private company already trained on the CPSA projects. from our team. So we hope that for the next, in this July, in this June and July, we plan to provide training to the government officials as well. So I think what we have been involving, and also with another, I think as Mark's already share about what is our next step to engage with the private sector, with the government and other stakeholders. So I think that is what we has been involved and so far in our country. Thank you so much, Mark and everyone.
Okay, so Emma, and Sandalin, if I may briefly summarize and reiterate the point we have already raised earlier, it is really important to support and maximize existing multi-stakeholder platforms, and also to support and sustain this national or local level multi-stakeholder platforms. No, it is an effective common ground for private sector, for farmers organization to come together and ensure that investments or expenditure or public programs for agriculture, especially for youth, rural youth and women, are responsive or are respective of the basic human rights and other principles being our principles enshrined in the ASEAN RAI guidelines. So back to you, Emma.
Thank you, Max. Thank you so much. I see we have 5 minutes left for this discussion. So before really wrapping up, I would like to ask to the other participants, maybe CSOs or NGOs from other countries, is there any particular point or any particular priority, especially for work with government and the private sector, that you would like to add to what Mr. Tongdam and Max and the other speakers have shared with us? Because there will be an opportunity to have our message from this breakout session conveyed into the final part of the event, so in the plenary session. And I think it's a very good opportunity. I see Mr. David King, please.
Good afternoon, all. David King. I'm an interloper. I am not part of RAI. In fact, I'd never heard of it until Green Asia asked me. I'm an elderly private consultant in agriculture for many, many years. I live in the Philippines, and I've been quite active and still am active in agroforestry and vegetable production with IP communities, indigenous communities. However, my comment in general is small-scale farming can only become efficient if they work together as, I don't mean they have to be a formal federation or anything, but if you can work with groups of farmers to work several sectors of land together as one unit, it's much more efficient and effective in my view. And the other issue was when you have large areas, large tracts like coconuts and plantation crops, one of the most effective measures I have seen in development has been fair trade. Fair trade organization it impacts the whole supply chain. It gives benefit, cash benefit, directly to the community who grows the commodity, in this case, coconuts, and they have a total discretionary ability to spend that money. And that is quite, with guidance, that's an amazing development experience for that community. And I'm talking a cluster of, say, 20,000 farmers. And they have the discretion to develop their own projects, to fund it, and to manage it. The impact is quite impressive, and that's the main point I wanted to make. I'm not promoting fair trade. I'm saying that under certain circumstances, you can get very, very, very good impact from that sort of organization. But primarily, I'm saying small-scale operation is a limitation, and it needs to be overcome. And the other way is looking at other options that private sector may give. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. King. We've been reminded that we have 99 seconds before the breakout session closes. So I'd like to quickly ask Jenny from ASEAN if there's any questions she has for the floor on the priorities to report back to plenary. And if the session closes before I manage to say goodbye, I'd like to thank everyone who was here with us today. Jenny, floor
Yes.
is yours.
Yes, thank you, Emma. I think all the presentations and the inputs from our group is very clear, and we're ready to share our recommendations for future work later in the plenary. We highlighted, let me just share very quickly, the recommendations for future work from the presentations. One is the awareness raising on RAI, the advancing national policies and programs supporting youth and women. Third is investing local action supporting agri-entrepreneurship. We also have conducting national and regional exchanges on RAI models, policies and programs, etc. And we also recommend to maximize existing multi-stakeholder engagements and mechanisms and develop monitoring mechanisms or social accountability. And of course, continuing the similar regional process as regular multi-stakeholder mechanism. So that's basically our recommendations for future work that we will present later in the plenary. Thank you, Emma. Back to you.
Wow, Jenny, that was really quick. So thank you. I encourage everyone to stay for the final part, so we'll have a chance to hear what was said.
Recording in progress.